I heard from younger journalists who were scrambling for adjunct jobs or doing piecework in corporate communications. But I determined to carry on writing about the subjects that gripped me, especially poverty and inequality, even if I had to finance my efforts entirely on my own. And I felt noble for doing so. Then, as the kids say today, I checked my privilege. I realized that there was something wrong with an arrangement whereby a relatively affluent person, such as I had become, could afford to write about minimum-wage jobs, squirrels as an urban food source, or the penalties for sleeping in parks, while the people who were actually experiencing these sorts of things, or were in danger of experiencing them, could not. In the last few years, I've gotten to know a number of people who are at least as qualified writers as I am, especially when it comes to the subject of poverty, but who've been held back by their own poverty. There's Darrell Wellington, for example, a local columnist and poet in Santa Fe, who has, at times, had to supplement his tiny income by selling his plasma, a fallback that can have serious health consequences. Or Joe Williams, who after losing an editorial job was reduced to writing for $50 apiece for online political sites while mowing lawns and working in a sporting goods store for $10 an hour to pay for a room in a friend's house. Linda Tirado was blogging about her job as a cook at IHOP when she managed to snag a contract for a powerful book titled Hand to Mouth, for which I wrote the preface. Now she is working on a multimedia mentoring project to help other working-class journalists get published. There are many thousands of people like these, gifted journalists who want to address serious social issues but cannot afford to do so in a media environment that thrives by refusing to pay, or pay anywhere near adequately, its content providers. Some were born into poverty and have stories to tell about coping with low-wage jobs, evictions, or life as a foster child. Others inhabit the once proud urban creative class, which now finds itself priced out of its traditional neighborhoods, like Park Slope or LA's Echo Park, scrambling for health insurance and childcare, sleeping on other people's couches. They want to write, or do photography, or make documentaries. They have a lot to say, but it's beginning to make more sense to apply for work as a cashier or a fry cook. This is the real face of journalism today. Not million-dollar-a-year anchor persons, but low-wage workers and downwardly spiraling professionals who can't muster up expenses to even start on the articles, photo essays, and videos they want to do, much less find an outlet to cover the costs of doing them. You can't, as I learned from Darrell Wellington, hop on a plane to cover a police shooting in your hometown if you don't have a credit card. This impoverishment of journalists impoverishes journalism. We come to find less and less in the media about the people who work from paycheck to paycheck, as if 80% of the population had quietly emigrated while the other 20% wasn't looking. Media outlets traditionally neglected stories about the downtrodden because they don't sit well on the same page with advertisements for diamonds and luxury homes. And now there are fewer journalists on hand at major publications to arouse the conscience of editors and other gatekeepers. Coverage of poverty accounts for less than 1% of American news. Or, as former Times columnist Bob Herbert has put it, "We don't have coverage of poverty in this country. If there is a story about poor people in the New York Times or in the Washington Post, that's the exception that proves the rule. We do not cover poverty. We do not cover the poor." As for commentary about poverty, a disproportionate share of which issues from very well-paid, established columnists like David Brooks of the New York Times and George Will of the Washington Post, all too often it tends to reflect the historical biases of economic elites, that the poor are different than we are, less educated, intelligent, self